Back in the early 90s, the platformer was king. If a console wanted to achieve even just a moderate level of commercial success, then it was vital that it have a cartridge library chock full of colourful little jumpy guys. Nintendo had the likes of Mario and Kirby, and Sega had Alex Kidd and Sonic the Hedgehog. And NEC's TurboGrafx was no slouch on the platforming front either, with games like Bonk's Adventure and Ninja Spirit. But there was one other company who was still in the console business at the time and still trying to go toe-to-toe with the big guys, and that company was Atari. Now, Atari at this point were basically a completely different company to the company that released the video computer system back in 1977. And even though it was pretty much an ancient relic at that point, that same console was still being manufactured, albeit in a different form factor and now named the 2600. But Atari didn't have all their eggs in that one 2600 basket. They had a multitude of console offerings on the table. They had the Atari 7800, the Atari XEGS, and they even had a handheld, and a pretty excellent handheld at that too. I'm of course talking about the Atari Lynx. Those consoles were all a bit light on the platforming front, often choosing to follow a more classic arcade oriented path, although they weren't completely without them. And it's one of those games I'm going to be taking a look at today. This is Scrapyard Dog, released for the Atari Lynx in 1991. There was also a version for the Atari 7800 released the previous year, but I'm not going to be taking a look at that one because I don't have it and it can be a bit pricey. So we'll just stick with the Lynx one for now, shall we? So, can Scrapyard Dog go toe-to-toe against Mario? Or would Mario simply jump on it and then kick it off a cliff? Let's find out. The story of this game is that Louis, who has his name spelled two different ways on the back of the box, owns both a scrapyard and a dog called Scraps. Perhaps a little bit obsessed with his job if he's naming his pets after his line of work. We like if a urologist called their dog infected urethras. But Scraps gets kidnapped by Mr. Big. No, not the 80s rock band with Paul Gilbert in, but a generically named gangster, you know, like all those other gangster characters called Mr. Big. Have a gangster character and can't be bothered coming up with a stereotypically Italian name like Luigi Cannelloni? Don't worry, just go with Mr. Big. Although I do have to admit, this Mr. Big's a bit different. This one's a smoking dog in a jacket. The game never provides any explanation as to why your dog was kidnapped. You find notes and get phone calls at the end of the levels which provide a brief synopsis of the level ahead, but they never actually ask for any payment. They are more like, if you want to see him again you'll have to come and find us and stuff like that, which kind of makes me think that the gangsters just kidnapped the dog for a bit of a laugh. On the box art we see Louis holding a ransom note, and the back of the box says that the gangsters want the deeds to the scrapyard for some reason. It is a bit strange that they didn't add something like, give us the deeds or we'll drown your dog to one of these notes to provide the villains with a bit more of a motive. Regardless of the enemy's motives, you've got to go get your dog back. You can't leave him around Mr. Big. He is a bad influence. He's always smoking and doing crime. If you don't get Scraps back soon, then he'll soon be on 2 packs a day and be going around beating up old ladies. Now, do you want this cute little dog to turn into an emphysema-riddled granny smacker? Yeah, didn't think so. So better go get back then. Or Mr. Big might just cut him in half with this saw. Either way, I think we can all agree both outcomes are just as bad as each other. So best go get him back then. So how come Scraps is just a regular dog, but all the other dogs in the game are more like people dogs. I don't get it. All the other dogs go around standing upright and wearing clothes, whereas Scraps goes around on all fours wearing nothing but a collar and a lead. Is it some kind of kink thing? Is Louis into it too? Dirty boy. There is one other dog in this game, and that's the one in the window of Pat's Pets. And he doesn't look all too happy about his current situation. And judging by the way he's standing, he wants out. And with what looks like a pool of blood next to him, he may very well be trying to escape a murder. Or he's just committed one. On your quest to save your dog and possibly kinky lover Scraps, you'll traverse through the scrapyard, a city, a forest, a mountain, a desert, an icy place, and a spooky castle. Ooh. Each of these levels have multiple stages, with most levels having 5. All the individual stages are different too. For example, the desert level starts out in the middle of the desert, but then another stage is in an Old West style ghost town. Some levels include vehicle stages that play more like a shmup than a platformer, to add a bit of variety. That bird clearly has some kind of disease. I wouldn't get too close to it if I was you, mate. There's loads of variety here, and every stage feels unique, which is not something you can say about most platformers. The individual stages aren't particularly long, and none of them overstay their welcome, whilst simultaneously having enough of them to make it feel like you're going on a proper adventure. All the stages flow seamlessly into one another, and the progression never feels jarring. The notes between stages and these cutscenes of your poor little pooch being driven off in a van help make this game feel like a continuous experience. Platformers can often feel a bit disjointed, like they're just a hodgepodge of different themes one after the other with nothing really connecting them. Like, you start off in a forest and then the next level you're in space, and after that you're inside a massive goose. But Scrapyard Dog has completely avoided this problem. In this game, you'll come across a menagerie of miscreants who all want you dead. Okay, the gangster dogs I understand given the story, but what exactly Louis has done to deserve the murderous hatred of all the world's wildlife remains unclear. The bomb-pooping birds, psychotic cats, bears, snakes, bats, and weird mouse people, they all want blood. Maybe Mr. Big was actually rescuing Scraps because Louis was forcing him to walk around on all fours wearing nothing but a collar. Pretty messed up, dude. And maybe the animals just want to keep Scraps safe. Now, for whatever reason, the area's supernatural inhabitants have also got a beef with Louis. These goofy looking ghosts and frickin' gnome dudes don't want him to get his dog back either. Luckily, these skeletons don't have a problem with him and just want to let him know someone's on the phone for him. Unlike a lot of platformers, you don't kill your enemies by jumping on them. Instead, you've got an infinite number of cans to throw at their faces. If you want a bit more firepower than a few empty soup tins, then make sure you duck down at anything with a hole on the top, or press up on anything that looks like a doorway, as you might find yourself a secret little shop. In these shops you can buy new weapons, shields, and sometimes even extra lives. Now, I might not be much of a business mogul or anything, but I don't think running a shop out of an oven in a scrapyard is going to make you a millionaire. This game doesn't mess about with the gun either. This isn't some magic flower that lets you throw fireballs, this is just a straight up Glock. You can also get a flamethrower and a bomb. The other weapons are all a bit more fantastical in nature, like you've got this triple laser gun and a stun gun, which isn't a taser-like thing, but instead a gun that stops time and makes you invincible. This weapon is so overpowered and ridiculous, I kinda love it. For all the boss fights, you get a fireball gun with infinite ammo, which is certainly better than how it would be if you had to beat these guys with the contents of your recycling bin. The bosses are all huge and include a dog in a tank, a spooky sheriff, a giant fire-breathing frog, and my favourite, meth addict Rocket Raccoon. Sometimes if you look in a bin, you won't come across a haggard old man who's trying to sell you firearms, but instead discover a bonus minigame where you can win a bunch of different items and money. If you get the power up that makes you small, then you can go through these tiny doors that warp you to a later level, but doing this is a lot easier said than done. Firstly, you've got to find the power up, which is always hidden. Then you've got to make it to where the door actually is. If you get hit once, you lose the power up and you can't use any weapons, not even your tin cans, while the power up is active. Then you've got to do the thing that makes the door appear, and then you've got to get to the door within the few seconds before it all disappears. Warp pipes are so much less hassle. The game generally controls quite well, but there is still plenty of room for improvement in this area. Firstly, it does feel a bit stiff. You can move yourself in the air when you jump, but not if you fall off a platform. Then you just fall straight down like a bag of dead pensioners. The vehicle sections are the worst offender when it comes to controls. There's this weird inertia where you don't move for a second or two after pushing the direction button. As you can probably imagine, this makes dodging incoming attacks really bloody difficult. The graphics look nice and colourful and all, but it can sometimes be difficult to discern what's in the background and what's in the foreground. So some jumps feel more like a roll of the dice as to whether you'll land safely on a platform or plummet to your death. The snowy level was definitely the worst offender for this. And the wonky collision detection of the platforms doesn't help this either, and you'll often fall through things that should be solid ground. Just to clarify, these collision issues are only with platforms and not with enemies. Collision with enemies in this game is pretty spot on. This game is brutally difficult. For something that looks like a child-friendly early 90s platformer, you'd think it would be a bit more forgiving. On top of the aforementioned control issues and problems with platforms, you start off only one hit away from death. You can get shields which provide an extra hit, and they can be stacked, but they won't last all that long and aren't particularly common either. Later in the game, you can get some armour that provides you with a shield every time you die, but it's still not enough protection from the onslaught. The enemies really come at you in this game, and with the size of the sprites, there isn't an awful lot of room to dodge either. If all of this didn't seem catastrophic enough, the fact that this game doesn't give you any continues seriously doesn't do it any favours. And extra lives can be a bit hard to come by too. You get one every time you beat a boss, but good luck doing an entire level without dying a couple of times. There are no difficulty options to help you out here either. You're simply stuck with how it is. On the plus side, however, this game looks pretty damn good for a handheld title from 1991. The sprites are big and colourful, and the backgrounds are very well detailed too. There's also some sprite scaling going on here and there, which may not look too impressive today, but was something that even the SNES struggled with. After all, Mode 7 could only scale backgrounds and not sprites. These cutscenes are a nice touch, especially considering the fact that animated cutscenes like this were still not particularly common in games at the time. I just love how adorable Scraps the dog looks too. Oh, and the big smoking dog in a jacket. How can you not love that? The audio side of things are a bit less impressive. Yeah, the sound effects are perfectly serviceable, and the music is fine, but the major problem is that this game's soundtrack seriously needs a few more tunes. And you'll be hearing this little ditty a lot. This game is pretty long for an early 90s platformer, so if you're going to play the whole thing, this song will drive you completely and utterly crazy, and possibly drive you to commit several murders. So maybe turn the volume off for this one. So to summarise, this game is a cute and quirky little platformer that certainly provides a good bit of enjoyment. The graphics are large and colourful, and the game is packed with enemies that all look great. There are plenty of different level themes here, with some vehicle sections thrown in for some good measure. The levels all flow well into one another, with notes and phone calls to add a bit of flavour. And there are plenty of bonuses and hidden shops to find, where you can expand your arsenal to aid you on your quest. Sadly though, it's not all good. Stiff controls, excessive difficulty and repetitive music really don't do this game any favours at all. But the biggest offending factors are the dodgy platform collision and the fact that it's often difficult to discern what's in the foreground from the background, leading to many a death. So with all this combined, I can only give this game a 6 out of 10. There's definitely fun to be had here, don't get me wrong, but those negative points I mentioned prevent this game from being a great one. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to share, comment, like, subscribe and all that lot if you did. And why not tap that bell icon to be notified whenever I upload a new video. So I'd like to give a humongous, awesome, mega thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters, including Adam Phillips, Brandon Shoup, Christopher Turnbull, Daniel, Eddie, Jeffrey Easton, House of the Ted, Magnus Verzane, Stuart Christopher Brownlee and Wolfrey Wolves. So thank you all so much, you lot are awesome! So until next time, bye!